Hey everyone, and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. To all our viewers across America, Europe, Asia, and beyond, thank you for being part of our worldwide community. We hope you enjoyed today's story, so let's dive in. Chapter 1, Point of No Return. The midday sun cast harsh shadows across the mahogany desk where the divorce papers awaited my signature. I, Harrison Blake, former Delta Force operative turned security consultant, stared at the dotted line with a mix of anger and resignation. 15 years of marriage to Vanessa, ending with a stroke of a pen. Are you absolutely certain about this, Mr. Blake? Attorney Phillips adjusted his glasses, his expression professionally neutral. Once filed, the provisions we've discussed regarding assets and custody become binding. I nodded, recalling the previous night when I'd found yet another text message on Vanessa's phone. This time from Damon, discussing their weekend plans while I was supposedly in Chicago for work. It wasn't the first evidence of her infidelity, but it would be the last I'd tolerate. The arrangement gives her primary custody of Alex. Phillips continued. You'll have visitation every other weekend, and I'm aware of the terms. I interrupted, my voice carrying the edge that former teammates said made me frightening during operations. My son deserves stability. For now. What Phillips didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything for months. The late-night calls, the unexplained absences, the sudden need for girls' weekends that Instagram later revealed included a man with tattooed forearms and a smugly handsome face. Damon Reeves, former amateur MMA fighter, current owner of the CrossFit gym where Vanessa had suddenly developed an intense interest in fitness 18 months ago. I signed my name with deliberate strokes. 15 years dissolved in seconds. I'll file these today, Phillips said, collecting the documents. The hearing is scheduled for next month, but these temporary arrangements take effect immediately. I barely heard him. My mind was already calculating, analyzing, preparing. Not for the separation that had happened months ago when Vanessa's betrayal became undeniable, but for what would come next. The house we'd shared in Lakeside Heights, a wealthy suburb outside Denver, felt hollow as I returned. Vanessa had taken the day off, supposedly for a doctor's appointment. Her car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was likely with him. Again, I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and walked through the empty rooms. Photos of our life together still hung on walls. Skiing in Aspen, Alex's birth, family holidays, all monuments to something that no longer existed. I'd met Vanessa during my last deployment, a charity event for veterans. She'd been dazzling, ambitious, working in pharmaceutical sales with dreams of management. I'd been battle-hardened, but searching for normalcy. We'd built this life brick by brick. The security consulting firm I'd founded after leaving active duty had flourished, giving us financial freedom beyond what either of us had imagined. Vanessa had risen through corporate ranks as planned. Alex had come along, bringing a joy I hadn't known possible. And now it was ashes. My phone buzzed, a text for Vanessa. We need to talk about the house when I get home. Damon thinks we should sell rather than letting you buy me out. Damon thinks, as if he had any right to opinions about my home, my assets, my family. I didn't respond. Instead, I ascended the stairs to my home office and unlocked the hidden compartment behind my military service shadow box. Inside lay the contingency plans I'd created over decades of high-risk operations, identities, accounts, and resources unknown to anyone, including Vanessa. Dad! Alex's voice startled me as I quickly closed the compartment. School had ended early today. I'd forgotten. Hey, buddy, I said, composing myself as I turned to face my son. At 10, he had Vanessa's hazel eyes, but my dark hair and build. How was school? Fine, he said, his expression troubled beyond his years. Is Damon coming over again today? My jaw tightened. What do you mean, again? Alex looked down. He stays sometimes when you're traveling. Mom says it's grown-up stuff, and I shouldn't tell you because it would just make you mad. The glass in my hand nearly shattered in my grip. Does that make you uncomfortable, Alex? He nodded, still looking at the floor. He's always touching Mom and trying to give me advice about sports and stuff. And last time, he hesitated. Last time what? I kept my voice gentle, though rage burned through me. He said soon he'd be the man of the house, and I should get used to it. Something primordial awakened in me then, the cold, calculating precision that had kept me alive through 3 combat tours merged with a father's protective fury. I set down my glass and knelt to meet my son's eyes. Listen to me carefully, Alex. No one is replacing me as your father. Not ever. And I promise you, things are going to change very soon. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be, or how quickly that change would come. Chapter 2, 0 Hour. The divorce papers had barely left my hands when Alex burst into my office, his face drained of color. "Dad," he whispered, frantically turning the lock on the door behind him. "Mom's boyfriend is coming up the stairs with a gun." For a split second, disbelief paralyzed me. Then training took over. "Are you certain it was a gun?" I asked, already moving toward the gun safe concealed behind a painting. Alex nodded vigorously. He was arguing with Mom downstairs. She told him you'd signed the papers today, and he got really mad. Said something about making sure you didn't change your mind. My son's voice broke. Then he pushed Mom, and I saw him take it from his jacket. Fury and focus battled within me. I'd faced death in Fallujah and Kandahar, but never in my own home with my child at risk. Into the closet, I ordered, grabbing Alex's shoulder and guiding him toward the walk-in closet that connected to the master bedroom. I punched in the code to my gun safe, but hesitated, engaging an armed intruder with Alex's present wrist crossfire. Instead, I grabbed the tactical knife from my deployment gear and quickly ushered Alex into the closet's hidden panic room, a reinforced space I'd installed years ago, a precaution for my security work that Vanessa had called paranoid. "Stay here," I whispered, showing him how to seal the panic room from inside. "No matter what you hear, don't come out until I get you." "Dad, I'm scared," Alex whispered, tears forming. "Fear keeps you sharp," I said, repeating what my first commander had taught me. "But remember what I told you. Control the fear. Don't let it control you." I slipped out, leaving Alex in the hidden compartment while positioning myself behind the main closet door. Through the crack, I could see into the bedroom. Heavy footsteps approached, followed by the bedroom door swinging open. Damon Reeves entered, sweeping a Glock 19 before him with the awkward grip of someone who knew enough about weapons to be dangerous. His physical presence matched the photos I'd seen. Mid-30s, muscular with the overdeveloped upper body of someone who prioritized appearance over functional strength, tattoos covering both forearms. "Blake," he called out, "we need to have a conversation about your future, man-to-man." Behind him, I heard Vanessa's voice from the hallway, panic-stricken. "Damon, please. This isn't the way." "Shut up," he snarled back. "You said he'd give you trouble about the house." "About Alex. I'm handling it permanently." He moved toward the office door, trying the handle and finding it locked. "Blake, open up or I start shooting through the door." I remained silent, calculating angles and distances. When he turned toward the closet, I knew my window was approaching. The closet door swung open, and Damon stepped in, gun extended. The moment he crossed the threshold, I struck. My knife hand clamped down on his gun wrist, driving it upward while my other arm locked around his throat from behind. The surprise gave me the critical advantage. He tried to pivot, to bring the weapon to bear, but 15 years of combat training against his gym muscles wasn't a fair fight. We crashed against the closet wall. His finger tightened reflexively on the trigger, discharging a round into the ceiling. I drove my knee into the back of his leg, collapsing him forward while maintaining the chokehold. The knife pressed against his carotid artery. "Drop it," I hissed in his ear. His response was to thrash violently, trying to break my grip. The gun discharged again, the bullet splintering wood inches from where Alex was hidden. That shot decided Damon's fate. 2 minutes of controlled, silent violence followed. When it ended, Damon lay unconscious on the closet floor, the knife wound in his shoulder bleeding, but not life-threatening. His gun was secured, emptied, and in my possession. His breathing was labored, but stable. I zip-tied his hands and feet with restraints from my security kit, then gagged him with a necktie. Only then did I step out to face Vanessa, who stood frozen in the bedroom doorway. Her scream pierced the air when she saw Damon's bloodied form. "What have you done?" she shrieked, rushing forward only to stop short my expression. "What have I done?" The cold fury in my voice halted her. He came into my home with a gun, endangered our son, and you're asking what I've done? He was just trying to scare you. Tears streamed down her face. He wasn't going to hurt anyone. I held up the Glock. 2 discharged rounds say otherwise. One nearly hit Alex. Her face went pale. Alex? Where is he? Safe, I replied, which is more than I can say for you if you take one more step toward this man. I pulled out my phone and dialed. This is Harrison Blake. I need to report an armed home invasion. The intruder is subdued but injured. I gave our address, then ended the call and turned back to Vanessa. The police will be here in minutes. You have one chance to tell me the truth. Did you know he was armed? Did you let him in knowing his intentions? Vanessa's face crumbled. I didn't know about the gun, I swear. He was just supposed to talk to you about the divorce settlement. Make sure you didn't challenge anything. By threatening me at gunpoint, in front of our son, the control in my voice was slipping. I didn't know Alex was home. He was supposed to be at Jason's house after school. From the closet came a small voice. Mom canceled my play date this morning. She didn't tell you. Alex stood in the closet doorway, having emerged from the panic room despite my instructions. His young face showed a mixture of fear and, something worse, understanding. In that moment, he looked older than his 10 years. Alex, baby, are you okay? Vanessa moved toward him, but he stepped back, moving closer to me. You lied, he said simply. You told Damon that Dad would be gone until tonight. The implications of those words hung in the air between us as sirens wailed in the distance. Chapter 3. Aftershocks. Detective Laura Montgomery studied me from across the interview room table at the Lakeside Heights Police Department. At 40-something with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that had seen too much, she made it clear she wasn't easily impressed by my military background or security credentials. Walk me through it again, Mr. Blake, she said, tapping her pen against her notepad. You signed divorce papers, went home, and then your son warned you about an armed intruder? I repeated my statement for the third time, clinically detailing Damon's entry, his threats, and my response. I used necessary force to disarm and restrain him after he discharged his weapon twice in proximity to my son. Montgomery's expression remained skeptical. And you just happened to be an expert in hand-to-hand combat against armed assailants. Not by chance, detective. By extensive training and experience. She nodded slowly. Mr. Reeves claims you attacked him unprovoked when he came to discuss the divorce with your wife. The gun he brought suggests his idea of discussion differed from mine. A gun registered to you, Mr. Blake. One of several you own. I leaned forward slightly. A gun stolen from my collection during one of his previous visits to my home while I was traveling. As the gunshot residue test will confirm, he fired it twice. As my son's testimony confirms, he entered with threatening intent. The detective's eyes narrowed. Convenient that everything aligns with your version. Truth often appears that way. I replied evenly. We both knew what was happening. Damon had connections in the department, friends from his gym, including Officer Powell, who'd responded to the call and immediately tried steering the investigation toward charging me with assault. 4 hours of questioning later, I was released without charges. The evidence was too clear. Gunshot residue on Damon's hands, Alex's testimony, and even Vanessa's reluctant admission that Damon had been agitated about ensuring I didn't contest the divorce terms. Outside the station, Bernard Reynolds waited beside his black Audi. My oldest friend and the chief counsel for my security firm looked out of place in the police parking lot with his impeccable suit and silver-rimmed glasses. You look like hell, Harry, he said as I approached. Feel worse, I replied, climbing into the passenger seat. Alex, safe with my sister Mariah at her place. Vanessa tried to take him, but I intervened with a temporary emergency custody filing. Judge Winters granted it given the circumstances. Relief flooded through me. Bernard was not just my attorney, but my brother-in-arms from our first deployment. He'd lost a leg in the same firefight where I'd taken shrapnel on my back. We'd recovered together, started our civilian lives together, trusted each other implicitly. Damon, I asked as Bernard pulled onto the highway. Treated and released to police custody. Charged with breaking and entering, illegal possession of a stolen firearm, and assault with a deadly weapon. his attorneys already working on bail. I gazed out the window at the Colorado mountains in the distance. He'll be out by morning. Probably, Bernard agreed grimly. His gym trains half the department's officers. But he's facing serious charges, Harry. This isn't going away. Neither am I said quietly. Bernard shot me a concerned look. What are you planning? To protect my son. To finish what Vanessa started. Harrison, Bernard's voice took on the serious tone he used in critical business negotiations. I know that look. Whatever you're thinking, step back. We can handle this legally. The evidence supports self-defense. Vanessa's infidelity and Damon's attack strengthen your position for full custody. I remained silent, watching the familiar streets of Lakeside Heights pass by. The manicured lawns and elegant homes that had once represented success now seemed like a facade, pretty coverings for ugly truths. Pull over at Westridge Park, I said suddenly. Bernard complied, guiding the Audi into the small parking area beside the neighborhood park where I'd taught Alex to ride a bike. Once stopped, I turned to face my friend. I need you to understand something, Bernie. This isn't just about the divorce or custody anymore. That man came into my home with a gun. He endangered my son. He did it with Vanessa's knowledge, whether she admits it or not. You don't know that for certain. I do. I cut him off. Alex told the detective that Vanessa assured Damon I wouldn't be home until tonight. She created the opportunity, Bernie. She's been bringing him into our home for months, letting him play father to my son, undermining me. And today, she allowed him to bring a weapon into the house where our child lives. Bernard removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. What are you saying, Harry? I'm saying they crossed a line, one that can't be uncrossed. So what's your play? Bernard asked quietly. Officially? I'll let the justice system handle Damon's charges. I'll petition for full custody based on today's events. I'll be the model of restraint and paternal concern. And unofficially, I looked out at the playground where Alex had once played innocently, unaware of his mother's betrayal or the violence that would enter his life. Unofficially, I'm going to dismantle their lives piece by piece. Not quickly, not obviously, but thoroughly. Bernard studied me for a long moment. You know I'll always have your back, but this path leads to places even we haven't been. I thought of Alex's frightened face, of the bullet hole in the ceiling inches from where he'd hidden, of Vanessa's tears for Damon rather than concern for our son. Some lines once crossed change everything, I said. Today wasn't just about infidelity or divorce. It was a declaration of war. As we drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Montgomery. Reeves made bail. Restraining order in place, but watch your back. I smiled grimly. Let them think I was the one who needed to watch my back. The truth was much different. In the shadowy world of my former profession, I'd learned that true vengeance wasn't swift and violent. It was patient, methodical, and inescapable. And I'd only just begun. Chapter 4, Recalculation. 3 weeks after the incident, I sat in Judge Eleanor Garner's chambers alongside Bernard, opposite Vanessa and her attorney, Philip Donovan, a divorce specialist known for aggressive tactics and steep fees. Let me be clear, Judge Garner said, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her reputation for no-nonsense family court proceedings. This hearing isn't about your divorce settlement, which remains on schedule. It's about determining temporary custody arrangements in light of the violent incident in your home. Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, what happened was terrible, but Harrison is twisting it. Damon made a mistake. A mistake, I interrupted, earning a sharp look from Bernard. Bringing a stolen gun into our home and discharging it near our son was a mistake. Mr. Blake, Judge Garner warned, you'll have your turn. Donovan smoothly interjected. Your Honor, Mr. Reeves has taken full responsibility for his actions and is complying with all court orders. Ms. Blake had no knowledge of his intentions and was herself a victim of his momentary lapse in judgment. She's been Alex's primary caregiver throughout the marriage while Mr. Blake frequently traveled for business. I bit back a retort as Bernard placed a cautioning hand on my arm. The judge turned to the court-appointed child psychologist. Dr. Winters, what is your assessment after speaking with a minor child? Dr. Winters adjusted her glasses. Alex Blake exhibits signs of acute stress following the incident. He expresses feelings of betrayal toward his mother and concern about Mr. Reeves. He feels safe with his father, but worries about future violence. Most concerning is his statement that his mother instructed him not to tell his father about Mr. Reeves' previous visits to the home. Vanessa flinched visibly, the tissue in her hand shredded under nervous fingers. After 2 hours of testimony, including Alex's recorded interview, Judge Garner rendered her decision. Temporary full custody is awarded to Harrison Blake, with supervised visitation for Vanessa Blake twice weekly at the Family Services Center. She held up a hand as Vanessa gasped. This arrangement will be reassessed in 3 months. Mr. Blake, you're ordered to make the minor child available for these visits and to engage in co-parenting counseling with Ms. Blake. As we exited the courthouse, Vanessa caught up to us on the steps, her face contorted with anger. You planned this, she hissed, keeping her voice low as reporters lingered nearby, covering an unrelated case. You wanted to punish me from the moment you found out about Damon. I didn't bring a gun into our home, Vanessa. I didn't endanger our son. This isn't over, she warned. When people learn what you're really like, be very careful. I cut her off, my voice dropping to a register she'd rarely heard, the one reserved for truly dangerous situations. You have no idea what I'm really like, but you're about to find out. The color drained from her face as Bernard steered me toward the parking garage. That was unnecessary, he muttered once we were alone. It was entirely necessary, I replied. Phase 1 is complete. Now for Phase 2. Bernard sighed. The custody ruling went our way. Let's focus on finalizing the divorce advantageously and moving forward. I shook my head. You still don't understand. This was never just about custody or divorce terms. Later that evening, after putting Alex to bed in our temporary apartment, a secure, high-rise unit owned by my company, I made a call to Solomon Reed, a former NSA analyst who now worked exclusively for select private clients, including my firm. I need everything on Damon Reeves, I said when he answered. Not just the surface background we already have. I want digital footprints, financial regularities, personal weaknesses, everything. That's comprehensive work, Solomon replied. Timeline, 2 weeks. And the same for Vanessa. Focus on her pharmaceutical connections and any communications with Reeves prior to their physical relationship. You're casting a wide net, Harry. I'm hunting bigger prey than anyone realizes, I replied. The next morning, I met with Cynthia Navarro, the ruthlessly efficient CEO of my security firm, in her minimalist office overlooking downtown Denver. I need to step back from operations temporarily, I informed her. Family situation. Cynthia, who'd built her reputation in corporate intelligence before joining my company, studied me with calculating eyes. This is about more than Alex, isn't it? Everything is about Alex, I corrected her. But protecting him requires addressing all threats. She nodded slowly. Take the time you need. The Martinez contract is locked down, and the Saudi expansion can wait. I placed a flash drive on her desk. If anything happens to me, give this to Bernard. It contains contingency plans. Planning for the worst. Her eyebrow raised. Always have. That's why we're still alive. Over the next 2 weeks, I balanced caring for Alex with meticulous planning. The son who had once been reserved around me, a consequence of my frequent business travel, now clung to our time together. We played chess, hiked in the nearby mountains, and had long conversations about his feelings regarding the separation. I arranged for him to see a trauma specialist, Dr. Elise Morgan, who helped him process the gun incident without causing further harm. He's remarkably resilient, Dr. Morgan told me after their 3rd session, but he feels deeply betrayed by his mother. That relationship will need careful rebuilding. If she earns it, I replied. Meanwhile, Solomon delivered the intelligence I'd requested. The data on both Vanessa and Damon proved more valuable than I'd anticipated. Damon's history included 2 sealed juvenile records for assault, a drinking problem carefully hidden from his fitness clients, and, most significantly, a pattern of targeting wealthy married women at his gym, extracting gifts and loans before moving on. But the true revelation was Vanessa. Solomon had recovered deleted text messages through backup cloud data showing she'd been aware of Damon's financial motivations from early in their relationship. "I know you're just using me to get to Harrison's money," she'd written 6 months earlier. "But I don't care anymore. He's never really here, even when he's home." More damning were messages from the day of the incident. "Vanessa, he signed the papers today. Once they're filed, we can push for the house and better settlement terms. Damon, I'll make sure he doesn't change his mind. Be home at 3. Vanessa, he'll be at the office until 6. Alex is at Jason's. We'll have the house to ourselves after you talk to Harrison." The timestamps showed she'd sent that last message after canceling Alex's playdate, knowingly creating a situation where our son would be home when Damon arrived armed. I felt cold rage reading through the exchanges, not just at the betrayal, but at the casual endangerment of Alex. Whatever remaining doubt I'd harbored about my course of action vanished. Phase 2 began with an anonymous tip to Vanessa's pharmaceutical company about irregular prescriptions being filled through doctors who attended Damon's gym. An ethics investigation followed, freezing her pending promotion and placing her under internal review. Next came financial pressure. Through shell companies, I acquired the loan on Damon's gym from the struggling local bank that held it, then called in past due maintenance requirements, forcing expensive renovations. When Damon attempted to secure financing from a private investor, actually an operative Solomon had planted, the terms included a background check that accidentally revealed his pattern of exploiting wealthy clients, which leaked to his gym membership. By month's end, Damon's business was bleeding members, and Vanessa was fighting to keep her job. Neither could prove any connection to me. "This feels excessive," Bernard commented during our weekly update at his lake house, where we spoke freely away from potential surveillance. "It's precisely calibrated." I corrected him, watching Alex play with Bernard's golden retriever near the shore. "They're experiencing exactly what they deserve. Consequences proportional to their actions." "And what's the endgame?" Bernard asked. "Financial ruin? Public humiliation?" I smiled thinly. Phase 3. Chapter 5. Counterintelligence. The divorce hearing approached as autumn painted the Colorado landscape in fire colors. Despite Vanessa's attorney filing motions to expedite the process, Judge Winston had maintained the original schedule, giving me precious time to advance my strategy. Meanwhile, Damon's criminal case for the gun incident had hit unexpected complications. Key evidence, including the ballistics report confirming the bullets came from my stolen gun, was misplaced during a department transfer. Detective Montgomery, who'd been building a solid case, was reassigned to a task force investigating drug trafficking. I knew exactly why. Solomon's intelligence had revealed that Damon's connections went beyond training police officers at his gym. He supplied performance enhancers to several department members, including Lieutenant Christopher Wells, who'd ordered Montgomery's reassignment. This corruption demanded adjustment to my plans. I couldn't rely on the justice system to properly penalize Damon, but I could use this corruption against him. One unseasonably warm October evening, I received an unexpected visitor at the apartment. Detective Montgomery stood at my door, out of uniform, her expression grim. "We need to talk," she said. "Not here." 20 minutes later, we sat in her car in an empty parking garage. "Your case against Reeves is being buried," she stated bluntly. "Wells pulled me off officially, but I kept digging. Reeves has half the department's tactical team buying steroids through his special client program. They won't touch him." "Why tell me this?" I asked, studying her carefully. "Because I've worked family violence cases for 15 years, and I know when a child is in danger." Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Your ex-wife is still seeing Reeves despite the restraining order. He was at her apartment last night when I conducted surveillance." This wasn't news to me. Solomon's team had documented their continuing relationship, but Montgomery's involvement was unexpected. "What's your interest here, detective?" Professional dedication doesn't usually extend to off-book surveillance. Montgomery was silent for a moment. "My sister was killed by her ex-husband after the department ignored her protection order because he was friends with officers. That was in Chicago 12 years ago. I transferred here afterward." Her personal motivation explained her persistence. It also made her a potential asset. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Information," she replied. I believe Reeves is connected to a steroid distribution ring targeting wealthy clients through several high-end gyms. If I can prove that, his department protection evaporates. And you think I have this information? I think you've been investigating them independently. I've been a detective long enough to recognize when someone's running a parallel operation. She turned to face me directly. Your military background, your security connections. You're not just waiting for the courts to handle this. I consider my options carefully before responding. Let's say, hypothetically, I might come across information about Reeves' supplemental income streams. What happens to that information? It goes to the DEA task force, bypassing local jurisdiction. Her eyes narrowed, but only the drug-related activities. Whatever personal vendetta you're pursuing stays out of it. Hypothetically, I said, that arrangement could work. We established secure communication protocols, and I provided her with enough of Solomon's intelligence to launch a legitimate investigation while withholding anything that might implicate my ongoing operations. What Montgomery didn't know was that her involvement accelerated my timeline. If she was building a case against Damon, I needed to complete my plans before he was potentially taken into federal custody. The next day, I visited Vanessa during her supervised visitation with Alex at the Family Services Center. While Alex played in the activity room, I requested a private moment with her in the adjoining observation area. "What do you want?" she asked, the strain of recent weeks evident in the dark circles under her eyes and her uncharacteristically disheveled appearance. "To understand," I said, maintaining a neutral expression. "Was it worth it, Vanessa? Your career is imploding, Damon's gym is failing, and you've lost custody of Alex. Was destroying our family worth it?" Anger flashed across her face. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" The perfect, controlled Harrison Blake finally showing emotion, revenge. "I'm simply curious about your cost-benefit analysis," I replied calmly. "You had a successful career, financial security, and a son who adored you. Now you have supervised visitation and a boyfriend who's facing criminal charges. You have no idea what it was like being married to you," she hissed. "Always calculating, always planning, never truly present. Damon made me feel alive. And now," her composure cracked slightly. "What do you want from me, Harrison? To beg? To say I made a mistake? Fine, I made a mistake. Is that what you need to hear?" I studied her for a moment. "What I need is to ensure Alex's safety and well-being, which means understanding whether you recognize the danger you placed him in." "It was one incident. It was a pattern of decisions," I corrected her. "Bringing Damon into our home, exposing Alex to your affair, canceling his playdate knowing Damon was coming armed." Her face paled. "I didn't know he had a gun. I've told you that repeatedly." I removed my phone and played the recovered text message. "He'll be at the office until 6. Alex is at Jason's. We'll have the house to ourselves after you talk to Harrison." The blood drained from her face. "How did you? You knew Alex's playdate was canceled. You knew he'd be home. You knew Damon was coming to talk to me. The timestamps don't lie, Vanessa. Those messages were private," she whispered. "Nothing is truly private anymore," I replied. "Especially not evidence of child endangerment." Her eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "That depends entirely on your next decisions." I leaned closer. "Damon is toxic, Vanessa. He's using you financially while selling performance enhancers to half the police department. He's facing federal investigation. Cut ties now, cooperate with the custody arrangement, and we can establish a healthy co-parenting relationship for Alex's sake." Or, she challenged, though fear had replaced defiance in her eyes. "Or I'll be forced to use every resource at my disposal to protect our son, including these messages and other evidence I've gathered." She was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, she asked, "How do I know you won't use it anyway? You've clearly been building a case against me. Because despite everything, you're still Alex's mother. He loves you, even through his current feelings of betrayal. I won't destroy that relationship unless you force my hand." Before she could respond, the visitation supervisor returned with Alex, ending our conversation. That night, alone in my apartment after Alex was asleep, I received a text from an unknown number. "Wells is moving evidence tomorrow. Reeves likely tipped off. LM. Montgomery's warning meant the corruption ran deeper than we'd thought. I immediately contacted Solomon to accelerate our digital surveillance on Lieutenant Wells and to secure backup copies of all evidence against Damon. The next morning, I dropped Alex at school and headed to a prearranged meeting with Bernard at his office. As I entered the parking garage, I noticed a black SUV with tinted windows idling near the entrance. Instinct and training immediately put me on alert. I circled to the secondary entrance, hand moving closer to the concealed sidearm I'd carried since the incident in my home. As I rounded the corner, two men emerged from the stairwell, both with the unmistakable build and movement patterns of experienced fighters. "Mr. Blake," the taller one called out. "Lieutenant Wells would appreciate a word." I assessed my options in a fraction of a second. These were police officers operating outside official channels, dangerous territory. "I prefer to schedule meetings through proper channels," I replied, continuing toward my vehicle while maintaining awareness of their positions. "This isn't optional," the second officer said, moving to block my path. "Everything's optional," I countered, meeting his gaze directly. "For instance, I could option to release the footage from this garage's security cameras showing two officers attempting to intimidate a private citizen. Or I could option to contact Internal Affairs about Lieutenant Wells' arrangement with Damon Reeves regarding pharmaceutical distribution. Their expressions confirmed my suspicions before they could mask their reactions. "You're making serious accusations," the first officer warned. "Not yet," I replied, "but I could be, depending on your next move." A tense silence followed before the taller officer stepped aside. "The lieutenant just wanted to clarify some points about your ongoing custody case." "My attorney handles all legal matters," I said, moving past them to my car. "He'll be happy to address any legitimate concerns through proper channels." As I drove away, I called Solomon. "Wells, send enforcers. Escalate to Phase 3 immediately." Phase 3 was the end game, the culmination of weeks of intelligence gathering and strategic positioning. It wasn't just about punishing Vanessa and Damon anymore. The corruption I'd uncovered threatened Alex's safety more broadly. The system that should protect him was compromised. By evening, Solomon had compiled and anonymously distributed evidence packages to the DEA, FBI, and State Police Oversight Committee, bypassing the corrupted local chain of command. Simultaneously, financial records showing Wells' unexplained income were discovered during a routine audit at the credit union used by department employees. The first domino had fallen. Now I needed to ensure Vanessa understood exactly what was happening and the choice she faced. I sent her a simple text: "Federal investigation launching tomorrow. Last chance to distance yourself. For Alex's sake." Her response came hours later. "What do I need to do?" Chapter 6: Leverage. The Denver Morning News led with the story. Multiple officers detained in performance enhancer investigation. Lieutenant Wells and 3 other officers had been taken into custody by federal agents. The report mentioned a local gym owner being sought for questioning, though Damon wasn't named explicitly. Vanessa called me minutes after the broadcast, her voice tight with panic. "Harrison, what have you done?" "I didn't do anything," I replied truthfully. "Federal agencies acted on evidence of criminal activity. The question is what you're going to do now." "Damon keeps calling me," she admitted. "He wants me to let him stay in my apartment. Says people are trying to frame him." "And what do you believe?" Her silence spoke volumes before she finally answered. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Everything's falling apart. Meet me at Riverside Park in 1 hour," I instructed. "Come alone. This is your opportunity to make the right choice for once." The park was deliberately chosen, public enough for safety, private enough for conversation, and equipped with multiple exit routes. I arrived early, scanning for surveillance or threats before positioning myself on a bench overlooking the river. Vanessa arrived precisely on time, another deviation from her typically late appearance at appointments. She'd made an effort with her appearance, though stress had carved new lines around her eyes. "You look terrible," she said as she sat beside me, attempting familiar territory. "Cut the small talk," I replied. "You have decisions to make." She stared out at the water. "Why are you doing this, Harrison? Is destroying me and Damon worth it? Does revenge feel as good as you hoped?" This isn't about revenge, I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. It's about consequences and protecting Alex. By taking his mother away from him, you did that when you prioritized Damon over Alex's safety. I turned to face her directly. But you can still salvage something here. I removed a folder from my jacket and placed it between us on the bench. This contains two things. First, documentation of your knowledge regarding Damon's activities, including your text discussing his supplements and your awareness that he was selling to clients. Second, a sworn affidavit I've prepared for you to sign, stating that you were manipulated by Damon, were unaware of the extent of his illegal activities, and are willing to cooperate with authorities. She opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the contents. You want me to turn on Damon? I want you to choose Alex over a man who brought a gun into your son's home. The internal struggle played across her face, self-preservation warring with whatever attachment she'd formed to Damon, pride battling reality. What happens if I sign this? She asked finally. You provide a formal statement to Detective Montgomery, who, unlike Wells, is untainted by Damon's corruption. You cut all contact with Damon. You adhere to the custody arrangement and focus on rebuilding your relationship with Alex. In return, I ensure these text messages don't find their way to the prosecutor's office or your employer. And if I refuse? I shrugged. Then the evidence goes to the authorities, and you face potential charges as an accessory. Your pharmaceutical career ends permanently. Your visitation with Alex becomes even more restricted when the court learns you knowingly allowed a drug dealer around your child. Vanessa's face hardened. You really are a cold bastard, aren't you? This whole marriage. I thought you were just reserved, but this is who you truly are. No, I corrected her. This is who I become when someone threatens my son. You had 15 years to know me, Vanessa. You never bothered to look beneath the surface. She laughed bitterly. And what would I have found? This calculating monster who systematically dismantles people's lives. You would have found someone who protects what matters at any cost. I stood, looking down at her. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Sign the affidavit, meet with Montgomery, and begin rebuilding your life, or face the consequences of your choices. As I walked away, she called after me. He'll come after you, you know. Damon won't just disappear. I turned back briefly. I'm counting on it. Later that afternoon, I received confirmation that Damon had gone underground, abandoning his apartment after federal agents attempted to bring him in for questioning. His gym had been closed and sealed with investigation notices. Solomon's intelligence network tracked him to a motel outside Denver using a credit card belonging to one of his gym clients. He was cornered, desperate, and, most dangerously, aware that his world was collapsing. That evening, as Alex completed his homework, my phone rang with Vanessa's number. I'll sign it, she said without preamble. But I want something in return. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm still Alex's mother, she replied, a new firmness in her voice. I want a path back to shared custody if I comply with everything. A written agreement that after 6 months of supervised visitation and clean drug tests, we revisit the arrangement. It was actually a reasonable request, one that served Alex's long-term interests if she truly reformed. Agreed, with conditions, I said. Mandatory co-parenting counseling, continued cooperation with authorities regarding Damon, and completion of a parenting program. Fine. Her voice softened slightly. Harrison, did you ever love me at all? The question caught me off guard. After weeks of clinical planning and emotional detachment, the simple human query pierced through my armor. Yes, I answered honestly. But love wasn't enough to overcome betrayal. After we disconnected, I found Alex watching me from the hallway. Was that Mom? He asked. I nodded, setting my phone aside. She's going to be meeting with the police to help them with their investigation. Alex processed this with the serious expression that had become common since the incident. Is she in trouble? She made some mistakes, I explained carefully. Now she's trying to fix them. Like when I lied about breaking the vase last year, and you said owning up to mistakes is part of fixing them? I smiled slightly at his simple but accurate comparison. Something like that. Is Damon going to jail? The direct question deserved a direct answer. Probably yes. Alex nodded, seeming satisfied. Good. He scared me. As I tucked him into bed later, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Are you and Mom ever getting back together? No, buddy, I said gently. That part of our lives is over. But we'll both always be your parents, and we both love you. Even though she did bad things, I chose my words carefully. People can make serious mistakes without being bad people. Your mom made choices that hurt our family, but she's still trying to be a good mother to you. As Alex drifted to sleep, my phone vibrated with a text from Detective Montgomery. Reve's on the move, headed toward your previous residence. Officers en route, but delayed. I immediately activated the security protocols I'd established weeks earlier. The apartment had multiple layers of protection, and Bernard was on standby to come stay with Alex, if necessary. But Damon going to my former home, rather than my current location, suggested he didn't know where we were living now. That gave me an advantage and an opportunity to end this definitively. I called Bernard. I need you here with Alex. Emergency Protocol 3. On my way, he replied without hesitation. Are we under threat? Not yet. I'm going hunting. Chapter 7. Endgame. The night air carried a biting chill as I parked 3 blocks from my former home in Lakeside Heights. The house stood dark and empty, having remained unoccupied since the incident with Damon. Though Vanessa had initially fought to keep it in the divorce, recent events had forced her to agree to selling it and splitting the proceeds. I moved through the shadows between properties, avoiding streetlights and security cameras. A tactical vest beneath my jacket held essential equipment. Not for an assassination as Damon might expect, but for a carefully orchestrated conclusion. Solomon's last update had confirmed Damon was approaching the area in a stolen Honda Civic, having abandoned his recognizable Range Rover. The police response Montgomery had mentioned was deliberately delayed, part of our arrangement to give me time to implement the final phase. The backdoor security system recognized my biometrics, allowing silent entry. Inside, the house felt hollow. Furniture remained, but personal items had been removed during my controlled exit weeks earlier. I moved efficiently through the darkened rooms, placing small devices at strategic points before settling into position in the upstairs office, the same room where this had begun with the divorce papers and Alex's warning. At 11:42 p.m., headlights swept across the front windows as a vehicle parked down the street. Through the specialized optics I'd positioned, I observed Damon approaching on foot, his movements betraying his agitation and likely substance use. The bulge under his jacket indicated he was armed again, another critical piece of the scenario I constructed. I activated the remote system that would record everything happening inside the house, then retreated to the hidden passage connecting the master closet to the attic, an architectural feature I'd added during renovations years earlier, but never revealed to Vanessa. Damon entered using a key, presumably provided by Vanessa during their affair, and moved cautiously through the first floor. "Blake," he called out, his voice echoing in the empty house. "I know you're here. Your car's down the street." The vehicle he'd spotted was actually driven by one of Solomon's operatives, positioned to draw Damon in. The fiction that I might be waiting for him had been carefully crafted through digital breadcrumbs for him to follow. "You think you can destroy everything I've built?" Damon shouted, growing bolder as he moved through the kitchen. "You and your bitch ex-wife are both going to pay." He ascended the stairs, gun now drawn, a revolver rather than my stolen Glock. Interestingly, as he reached the top landing, I activated the first device. Vanessa's voice emanated from the master bedroom. "Damon, is that you? In here quickly." It was a composite recording created from various phone conversations, indistinguishable from reality to Damon's adrenaline-flooded perception. He moved swiftly toward the bedroom, pushing the door open. "Vanessa? What the hell are you?" The second device activated, projecting a holographic image of Vanessa for 3 crucial seconds, long enough for Damon to instinctively fire at the perceived threat. The gunshot reverberated through the empty house as the bullet embedded in the wall. Immediately, lights flooded the room, appearing to Damon as if he'd triggered some security system. "Police! Drop your weapon." My voice, modulated through speakers to sound like a megaphone announcement from outside, completed his disorientation. Damon panicked exactly as predicted, firing again at shadows before running toward the stairs. At that moment, I emerged from my hidden position and moved silently behind him. "It's over, Damon," I said calmly. He whirled, bringing his gun to bear, but I was already in motion. Years of combat training against his gym-developed physique wasn't a contest. I disarmed him with a precise strike to his wrist, sending the revolver skittering across the hardwood floor. "You!" he snarled, lunging forward with a wild punch that I easily sidestepped. "Me," I agreed, delivering a calculated strike to his solar plexus that dropped him to his knees. "What the fuck is happening?" he gasped, trying to regain his breath. "Justice," I replied, "customized specifically for you." Damon struggled to his feet, eyes darting toward his lost weapon. "You think you can just take everything from me?" "The gym, Vanessa. You never had anything worth taking," I interrupted. "Your gym was built on selling illegal substances. Your relationship with Vanessa was manipulation. And now you've broken into my home with a weapon again and fired shots. But this time, it's all being recorded." I gestured to the surveillance devices now visibly activated around the room. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by desperate rage. He charged me with the reckless abandon of someone with nothing left to lose. What followed wasn't a fight so much as a demonstration. Each of his attacks met precise counters. Each wild swing answered with controlled force. I allowed him to exhaust himself against my defenses before methodically dismantling him. A dislocated shoulder, a fractured wrist, a precise strike to the knee that would require surgical repair. As he lay groaning on the floor, I retrieved his weapon using a handkerchief. "Here's what happens next," I explained calmly as police sirens finally became audible in the distance. "You're going to be arrested for breaking and entering, attempted murder, illegal possession of a firearm by a person under indictment, and violation of a restraining order. The recording will show you fired at what you believed was Vanessa, attempting to kill her for cooperating with authorities. You set me up," he spat through bloodied teeth. "I created an opportunity," I corrected him. "You made every choice that led you here, starting with bringing a gun into my home where my son was present." The sirens grew louder. "Federal charges carry 15 to 20 years, I continued. "By the time you're released, if ever, you'll be a middle-aged ex-con with no assets, no career prospects, and a body broken by the prison system. Vanessa has already signed an affidavit detailing your drug distribution and how you manipulated her. You have no allies left." "I'll tell them everything," Damon threatened weakly. "How you planned this, how you've been targeting me. With what evidence?" I smiled thinly. "A desperate claim from a drug dealer caught trying to murder his former girlfriend? Against a decorated veteran and respected security consultant who was nowhere near this house tonight, according to multiple witnesses currently placing me across town." The realization of his complete defeat registered in his eyes as flashlight beams pierced through the windows. Detective Montgomery had timed the police response perfectly. I leaned closer. "Remember this moment, Damon. Remember that you brought this on yourself the instant you endangered my son." As officers breached the door downstairs, I slipped through the hidden passage one final time, leaving Damon to face the consequences of his actions alone. From a neighboring property, I watched as he was carried out on a stretcher, handcuffed despite his injuries. Montgomery exited last, evidence bags in hand, her expression professionally neutral, though her eyes scanned the perimeter knowingly. Phase 3 was complete. The threat Damon posed was permanently neutralized without compromising my position or ability to protect Alex in the future. The legal system would now process what remained of the man who had threatened my family. As I walked away through the quiet suburban night, I felt no triumph or satisfaction, only the cold certainty that I had done what was necessary. The true victory would be in Alex's continued safety and eventual healing, not in Damon's destruction. My phone vibrated with a text from Bernard. "Alex is asleep. All secure." "You." "Finished," I replied. "Coming home." Chapter 8. Aftermath. 3 days after Damon's arrest, I sat across from Detective Montgomery in a corner booth at an unremarkable diner outside Denver city limits. "The prosecutor is charging Reeves with everything," she said, stirring her coffee. "Attempted murder, breaking and entering, weapons charges, drug distribution. With the evidence we've collected and Vanessa's testimony, he's looking at 25 years minimum. I nodded, unsurprised. And the corrupt officers? Internal Affairs has taken over that investigation. 3 more have been suspended besides Wells. The department's in damage control mode. She studied me with professional assessment. Convenient timing on those surveillance devices in your former home. Almost like you anticipated an intruder. After the first incident, I took reasonable precautions to secure my property. I replied evenly. Just fortunate they captured Reve's actions so clearly. Montgomery's expression made it clear she didn't believe the coincidence, but respected the plausible deniability I'd established. Your ex-wife has been cooperative. Seems genuinely remorseful. People often find clarity when their decisions lead to disaster, I observed. Has she mentioned our custody agreement? She has. Says you've offered a path to shared custody conditional on her continued cooperation and rehabilitation. Montgomery leaned forward slightly. Was it your plan all along? Use Reve's self-destruction to force her to choose between him and her son. I considered the question carefully. My only plan was to protect Alex. The means evolved as circumstances required. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. I met her gaze directly. Is our business concluded, detective? She nodded slowly. The official investigation is proceeding by the book. Your statement has been recorded, and there's no evidence connecting you to anything beyond being the homeowner of a property Reeves broke into. And unofficially, Montgomery stood, placing cash on the table for her coffee. Unofficially, I hope never to discover exactly what happened that night. For both our sakes. After she departed, I remained, watching the everyday normality of the diner patrons, people untouched by the violence and betrayal that had transformed my life. Their mundane concerns seemed foreign now, though I had once shared them. The divorce was finalized the following week in a brief court appearance. Vanessa, subdued and newly cautious, accepted the terms without contest. Equal division of assets, the house to be sold, and my continued primary custody of Alex with her supervised visitation transitioning to shared custody pending completion of her requirements. Outside the courthouse, she approached me as Bernard gave us privacy. I want you to know I'm committed to earning back my place in Alex's life, she said, a new humility in her voice. The counseling is already helping me understand how I justified so many poor decisions. Actions matter more than intentions, I replied. Alex needs consistency and honesty from both of us moving forward. She nodded, then hesitated before asking, what happened that night? Harrison? With Damon at the house. Exactly what the police report describes. He broke in, believed you were there, and fired his weapon. The security system captured everything. That's not what I'm asking. Her eyes searched mine. The Damon they arrested was broken, not just arrested, but physically destroyed. The detective wouldn't give details, but the rumors. Perhaps he resisted arrest, I suggested mildly. Vanessa studied me with new awareness, truly seeing me perhaps for the first time in our relationship. Who are you, really? All these years together, and I never knew what you were capable of. You never asked, I replied simply, and now it's no longer your concern. As she walked away, I felt no satisfaction in her newfound fear or respect, only the hollow recognition that our marriage had been built on mutual misunderstanding. She had seen only the parts of me I'd allowed her to see, and I had failed to recognize the depths of her discontentment until it manifested as betrayal. 1 month later, Alex and I moved into a new home, a modernist structure on the outskirts of Denver with advanced security features and a spectacular view of the mountains. The property included 3 acres of land, a contrast to the manicured suburban conformity of Lakeside Heights. This is really all ours, Alex asked as he explored the expansive living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. All ours, I confirmed. New beginning. Bernard and his wife, Claire, joined us for the housewarming, bringing their golden retriever that Alex had grown attached to during her temporary stay. As they prepared dinner in the kitchen, Bernard joined me on the terrace overlooking the property. Quite a statement, he commented, gesturing at the architectural boldness of the house. Not hiding anymore. No more facades, I agreed. Alex deserves authenticity. Bernard sipped his bourbon thoughtfully. Speaking of authenticity, there's something you should know. The federal investigation into Reve's drug distribution has expanded. They're looking at connections to suppliers in 3 states. His plea deal offers are being rejected by prosecutors. Because they have a stronger case than anticipated? Because someone anonymously provided detailed financial records tracing the entire network. Records that would have taken federal agents months or years to compile independently. I gazed out at the mountains, saying nothing. Bernard continued, Solomon's been unreachable for 3 days. Coincidentally, his offshore accounts just received a substantial anonymous deposit. Sounds like he's earned a vacation, I observed. Harrison, Bernard's voice took on a cautioning tone. The scale of what happened to Reeves and his associates goes beyond protecting Alex. This was systematic destruction. I turned to face my oldest friend. They endangered my son, corrupted public officials sworn to protect us, and believed their connections would shield them from consequences. Their destruction was proportional to their threat. And Vanessa? What happens with her? She made her choice to cooperate. As long as she continues prioritizing Alex's well-being, she'll have the opportunity to rebuild their relationship. Bernard nodded slowly. And if she falters, then she'll discover that my patience extends exactly as far as Alex's safety requires. No further. The conversation ended as Alex called us in for dinner. Watching him laugh with Claire and play with the dog, I saw glimpses of the carefree child he'd been before the divorce, and violence had forced him to confront adult complexities. Later that night, after our guests had departed and Alex was asleep in his new room, I received a text from Vanessa. Alex seemed happy at visitation today. Said he loves the new house. Thank you for sending photos. I hadn't sent any photos. Alex had taken them himself and shared them during his supervised visit, making his own decisions about building bridges between his separated parents. He's resilient, I replied. Your progress report from the counselor was positive. Keep focusing on that work. I will, she responded. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for not seeing you clearly, for thinking you were cold when you were actually protective. I left the message unanswered. Whatever understanding Vanessa had finally reached about my nature came too late for reconciliation, but might serve Alex's interests going forward. As I moved through the new house, securing it for the night, I reflected on the transformation of the past months. The man who had signed divorce papers in that suburban office seemed distant now, constrained by social expectations and the fiction of normal family life. That man had died the moment Alex ran into the room with news of an armed intruder. What emerged in his place was clearer, more focused, and unbound by conventional limitations when it came to protecting what mattered. I checked the advanced security system one final time before looking in on Alex, sleeping peacefully in his new bedroom. Whatever the cost of the recent months had been in moral compromise, in revealing my true nature, in shattering the comfortable illusions of suburban life, seeing him safe made it worthwhile. The ruthlessness Vanessa had finally recognized wasn't new. It had always been there, honed in combat zones and maintained through years of security work. I had simply kept it contained, controlled, hidden behind the facade of a successful businessman and father. Now that facade was gone, replaced by something more authentic, if darker. And in that authenticity lay an unexpected freedom. To protect, to enforce boundaries, and to ensure that those who threatened my family would always face consequences beyond what conventional justice might provide. Chapter 9. Equilibrium. 6 months after Damon's arrest, life had settled into a new rhythm. My security firm continued to thrive under Cynthia's management, while I maintained a reduced role that allowed more time with Alex. His nightmares about the gun incident had gradually subsided through consistent therapy, and his relationship with Vanessa had begun cautious rebuilding during increasingly normal visitations. Damon Reeves had accepted a plea deal for 18 years after the federal case against his drug distribution network proved overwhelming. Lieutenant Wells and 2 other officers had been indicted for corruption, with more departmental resignations following as the investigation widened. Detective Montgomery had been promoted to lead a new internal affairs unit specifically targeting corruption. The systematic dismantling of everyone involved in endangering Alex was complete. What remained was ensuring his continued security and well-being. On a crisp spring morning, I sat in Dr. Morgan's office for our quarterly consultation about Alex's progress. "He's showing remarkable resilience," she noted, reviewing her notes. "The transition to shared custody has been smoother than anticipated, likely because of the gradual nature and the consistent boundaries you've both maintained." "And the lingering trauma from the gun incident?" I asked. "Significantly reduced. He still experiences occasional anxiety, particularly around loud noises, but the acute symptoms have resolved." She set aside her notebook. "However, there is something I'd like to discuss with you directly, Mr. Blake." "Go ahead." "Alex has developed a concerning perception about consequences and forgiveness," she explained carefully. "He's expressed several times that people who hurt us get what they deserve, and that Dad makes sure bad people pay. There's a rigidity to his thinking about right and wrong that's unusual for his age." I considered this information. He witnessed significant trauma and then observed justice being served to those responsible. Is it surprising he's drawn conclusions? "It's not the conclusions themselves, but the absolutism behind them," Dr. Morgan clarified. "Children normally develop more nuanced understanding of forgiveness and redemption alongside their concept of justice. Alex seems to be adopting a more uncompromising worldview." The unspoken implication was clear. Alex was modeling my approach to betrayal and justice. "What would you recommend?" I asked. "Continue reinforcing that his mother is working to repair their relationship. Demonstrate forgiveness in appropriate contexts. Show him that while consequences are natural, permanent condemnation isn't the only possible outcome." I nodded, though internally I questioned whether such lessons would serve him well in a world that rarely rewarded forgiveness. Nevertheless, I understood the broader developmental concerns. Later that week, as Alex and I prepared dinner at home, he broached the subject himself. "Dad, is Mom still a bad person?" he asked, carefully slicing vegetables as I taught him. I considered my response, recalling Dr. Morgan's concerns. "Your mother made serious mistakes that hurt our family, but that doesn't make her a bad person. She's working hard to make better choices now." Alex processed this thoughtfully. "But Damon was a bad person, right? That's why he's in prison." "Damon made many harmful choices that hurt others," I explained. "The consequences he's facing reflect the seriousness of those choices." "Will you ever forgive Mom?" The directness of his question caught me off guard. The easy answer would be affirmative, to model the forgiveness Dr. Morgan had encouraged. But I had promised myself never to lie to Alex about important matters. "Forgiveness is complicated," I said finally. "I've accepted what happened and moved forward. I work with your mother to give you the best life possible. That's more important than whether I personally forgive her." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this nuanced response. "I think I want to forgive her," he said after a moment. "Not forget what happened, but not be angry all the time." "That's very mature, Alex. And it's your choice to make." The conversation shifted to school topics, but the exchange lingered in my mind. My son was navigating complex emotional terrain with surprising wisdom. Perhaps there was value in demonstrating that forgiveness could coexist with appropriate boundaries and consequences, a balance I had rejected in my absolute approach to betrayal. 2 days later, I met with Vanessa at a neutral coffee shop to discuss summer vacation arrangements for Alex. 6 months of compliance with all requirements had earned her the transition to unsupervised visitation and approaching shared custody. "Thank you for meeting," she said as we settled at a corner table. The physical transformation was striking. She'd returned to the polished professionalism of her corporate image, though tempered with a new humility. "Alex mentioned he's interested in space camp this summer. It's on our consideration list," I confirmed, along with the Colorado Adventure Program. We discussed logistics efficiently, the business-like interaction now familiar after months of coordinated co-parenting. As we concluded, Vanessa hesitated before speaking again. "Harrison, I've completed the personal accountability program the court recommended. My counselor suggested I make direct amends where possible. She met my eyes directly. I want to apologize specifically for bringing danger into Alex's life, for prioritizing my relationship with Damon over our son's safety. There's no excuse for that choice. I studied her carefully, assessing the sincerity behind her words. Why tell me this now? The custody arrangement is proceeding as agreed. Because it's true, and it needs to be said. Her expression held no manipulation or hidden agenda I could detect. I've had months to reflect on how I rationalized each decision that led to Alex being endangered. I'll live with that guilt regardless of legal consequences or custody arrangements. The genuine remorse in her voice triggered an unexpected realization. Her suffering was no longer relevant to my objectives. Alex was safe. The threats had been neutralized. Vanessa's continued punishment served no strategic purpose beyond satisfaction of a vengeance that no longer burned as brightly. We both want what's best for Alex moving forward, I said finally. Your commitment to that goal is what matters now. She nodded, accepting the response without pushing for explicit forgiveness she knew would not be forthcoming. As we prepared to leave, she asked, "Has Alex said anything about our visits?" I'm trying to gauge if we're making progress. I considered the question, recalling my son's words about wanting to forgive. He values the consistency. He mentioned recently that he's working on processing his feelings about everything that happened. Relief flickered across her face. That's more than I deserve, but I'm grateful for it. As I drove home afterward, I reflected on the exchange. The cold, methodical vengeance that had driven me for months had accomplished its purpose. Alex was safe, those who threatened him removed from our lives, and systems in place to prevent future harm. The continuation of that vendetta against a genuinely remorseful Vanessa served no practical purpose. That evening, Bernard visited to discuss a security contract his law firm was considering with my company. "You seem pensive," he observed as we sat on the terrace after concluding business. "Trouble with Vanessa?" "The opposite," I replied. "She appears genuinely reformed. Prioritizing Alex, maintaining boundaries, fulfilling all requirements without complaint. And that bothers you?" Bernard asked with the directness of old friendship. I considered the question. It challenges my narrative. I categorized her with Damon as a threat to be neutralized. But unlike Damon, she's demonstrated capacity for change, Bernard noted. Does that merit recalibration of your approach? Possibly. I gazed at the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. Alex wants to forgive her. Says he doesn't want to stay angry. Bernard smiled slightly. Wisdom from the next generation. Perhaps worth considering. Forgiveness was never part of my calculation, I admitted. Neutralizing threats was the priority. And now the threats are neutralized, Bernard reminded me. What's the strategic value in maintaining absolute condemnation when cooperation better serves your primary objective, Alex's well-being? Put in those terms, the answer was clear. My refusal to acknowledge Vanessa's reformation didn't protect Alex. It potentially hindered the healthy family dynamic he needed. 2 weeks later, during the scheduled exchange of Alex for his weekend with Vanessa, I made a small but significant adjustment to the established protocol. Rather than the minimal interaction we'd maintained, I engaged in brief conversation about Alex's recent science project and his excitement about their planned museum visit. The surprise in Vanessa's eyes was evident, but she responded naturally, maintaining the focus on Alex rather than our relationship. As they prepared to leave, I said, "The Science Museum is featuring a new space exploration exhibit. He's been talking about it all week." "I've got tickets already," Vanessa replied with a small smile of shared understanding. It wasn't forgiveness, not in the absolute sense. The trust destroyed could never fully return. But it was a deliberate step toward a functional relationship that prioritized Alex's needs over my desire for continued punishment. A strategic recalculation based on changed circumstances. That night, as I secured the house, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Montgomery. "Thought you'd want to know. Reeves was denied his appeal. Sentence stands. Case closed permanently." I sent a simple acknowledgement and continued my evening routine, feeling neither triumph nor regret. The man who had threatened my family and home had received justice proportional to his actions. The system had worked, with significant assistance from my intervention, and the threat was permanently neutralized. Later, reviewing security footage from the property perimeter, I paused on an image of Alex and Vanessa earlier that day, captured walking to her car. They were laughing together about something, a glimpse of the mother-son relationship that existed before the fracturing of our family. His body language showed cautious trust rather than the guarded posture he'd maintained in earlier months. The sight prompted an unexpected realization. My refusal to acknowledge redemption when genuinely earned wasn't strength or principle. It was rigid thinking that potentially limited my ability to adapt to changing circumstances. True strategic thinking required constant reassessment based on current data, not adherence to outdated assessments. This insight didn't change my fundamental nature or my absolute commitment to protecting Alex through whatever means necessary. I would never truly forgive the endangerment of my son, but I could acknowledge Vanessa's reformed behavior and adjust my approach accordingly, maintaining preparedness while allowing for the possibility of functional co-parenting relationship. As for Damon and the corrupt officers who had enabled him, no such recalculation was necessary. Their threats had been permanently neutralized through precisely calibrated consequences. Their permanent removal from our lives ensured Alex's continued safety. The line remained clear. Those who threatened my family and refused to change their course would face my unyielding response. But where genuine reformation served Alex's interests, pragmatic adaptation took precedence over principle. In that balanced approach, ruthless when necessary, measured when appropriate, lay the path forward. Not forgiveness in the conventional sense, but strategic equilibrium that prioritized what truly mattered: my son's safety, security, and future. The man who had signed divorce papers 6 months earlier had been permanently transformed by the events that followed. The ruthless protector had always existed beneath the surface, but now stood acknowledged and integrated rather than compartmentalized. As I completed my security checks and looked in on Alex's sleeping form, I recognized that this transformation wasn't a deviation from my true self, but a fuller realization of it. Uncompromising in protection, adaptable in strategy, and guided by a single, unwavering priority: my son's well-being. Whatever came next, that principle would remain.